Hey Nerdchachos, it's your chief nerd, so thanks for joining me today. And as you can see, we aren't playing Planet Coaster today, but we're going to be giving a different game some love in a series that's going to be called Try Not to Suck At. So this series, we're going to try not sucking at a game called Airport CEO, unlike my mic, which clearly does suck. So Airport CEO is out on early access on Steam. We've just been updated to Alpha 35, so that brings international terminals. It means that your passengers will now have to pass through passport control before boarding any kind of international flight. I've played the game a couple of times since the day it first launched, so dipped in and out as and when the updates have been coming, and I've had varying degrees of success. So we're going to be completely off script for this series, so anything can happen, and how long this series lasts completely depends on how much we suck at the game. So there's a few things that I've done before I've actually started. So I've already set up my airport, I've already told it where it's going to be, which is just south of London, and I've also gone into the gameplay settings and I've enabled the realistic international stands section as well. So this means that we can now include passport control in our flights. So I guess the first thing that we need to do is to actually set up a functioning airport. We have nothing, as you can see. So this is the plot of land that we get given, 4 squares, and we're now given 3 million quid to play with. So that's a much improved state to where it was before. So the first thing I think we're going to need to do is just plan out what we want. The Alpha 34, I think it was, introduced research, or maybe 33, introduced research as well. So you're now no longer given everything to play with in one go. You now have to start to research things as you go along. So we should probably get a start on that. We need to start with general aviation. We need to start with actually just bringing planes into the airport and making some money before we can then start researching everything else. So the first thing I'm going to do is unlock this top patch of land. So I've got a long strip of land, and let's get to building. So we're going to need a runway. So I think to start with, to keep the costs down, let's go with grass, and we're going to need to place the runway. Now I know that when the airport becomes busy later on, we're going to need 2 runways, so we're going to need to plan for that in advance. We're going to need to do that first. So let's put the runway in the top corner, facing down. So if we have this one that's going to eventually... No, actually, let's do it the other way around. Let's do it that way, so that they take off that way, but they also land the same way. So we can have 2 runways. So let's go with an entry and the exit as well. We don't necessarily need to keep this runway to start with. We can do something with that later, I think. So next we need to do a foundation, and your general aviation planes tend to use a taxiway that's around 5 wide. Then we need a second runway, which we're going to use later on. So we need that one to come in and land the same way, but we need to leave a gap for the entry and exit ways. So it's 4. There we go. And then we're going to do the new entry and exit. So what I'm thinking is both sides at the top, so that we can bring our general aviation in this way, and then have them leave this way through the bottom. So now let's go ahead and cancel this, because we don't need those just yet. And I just had a thought, if we build in grass, we are going to need to upgrade this to concrete later, because of the rating that you get down at the bottom here now. So let's actually get rid of these, and let's build everything grass apart from these, which is tarmac, so that we don't have to close the runway later to update it. Right, okay, so we've got the foundations of our airport, so we know where we want our second runway later on. We know where we want our first runway to be, so we're going to say that later on in the game, anything on the left hand side runway is going to be departures only, and everything on the right hand side is going to be arrivals only, but they're all coming in the same direction, the same way. So let's now build the next part of the taxi, so that's fine. And then we're going to need to start planning where we're going to want our stands. So general aviation, they're all going to come in on a small stand, and then later on when we start building terminals, we'll need to start thinking about how we're going to get those down into a terminal, how we get our passengers through. I think what we'll do is we'll start small, we'll do internal flights as one terminal, and then once we've got some money coming in from flights, we can then start to plan a big airport. So let's do our general aviation to start with. So we're going to place a couple of stands to start, so that's 5 there, and then give it the foundation. So we know, like I say, it's going to be 5. If we do on the other side as well, so that they can share. I'm just wondering, do we do it? Yeah, we do. Okay. 3, 4, 5. And now let's do some more taxi. Keep it grass just to keep it cheap. Like I say, we can upgrade it later. Now I do want these to come in the other way, or to leave the other way, so leave that side rather than that way. And then we'll do the taxi again, and then bring it down the bottom here. Yeah, okay, let's do that. Like that. Okay, so we're going to be able to start with this. Now the next thing we're going to need to do as part of the whole airport bit is we need to build a checkpoint. So we're going to build a vehicle checkpoint. This allows us to bring vehicles in from the outside world. So when we start ordering things like fuel, this is all going to come through here. So let's build our checkpoint. And let's also start building some roads. So I'm going to start with a grass road. And I'm going to build a bus stop because we need to start bringing staff in eventually, and they're going to need somewhere to land when they do arrive. Okay, so the next thing we're going to need to start thinking about is how we're going to refuel our aircraft. So we're going to need some more infrastructure pieces. And now where are they? There we go, aircraft infrastructure. So you can see straight away we've got the fuel depot, and we're going to be able to do the small gas. So if we put the depot down here, so it's easy enough for the lorries to come in. And then we're going to need somewhere to park them. So I reckon that should probably come up here so that they're close to the stands. That's fine, so if we put that there. And then what I'm going to do is to bring the aircraft stands down some more. Like this. Fit one more in there. And the beauty of this is that you can cross over your roads and your taxiways. So that's exactly what we're going to do. So we're going to be able to bring a road down this way and along this way, ready for it to lead up to the other stands that we've got. So that's fine. So we've got a row of stands this side. We're going to have a row of stands these sides. I changed my mind with these ones. Let's not waste money just yet. Let's get rid of them so that we can just have the one side. But what we're going to also need to do is get the lorries and the vehicles up this way. So let's extend our road down this way to the left, bring it down here, and then bring this across here. So this is now going to mean that we're leaving as much space as we can down here for our domestic flights that we're going to have later on. We might be able to put an extra runway in here that's exclusively for your commercial flights. So that's fine. So we're building so far. It's looking good. We've got our runway ready to accept general aviation flights. We've got some stands waiting to go. We're able to refuel when it arrives. We've got the depot, we've got somewhere to park the vehicles, so we now need to start thinking about how we actually get them in, how we allow planes to land. So we're going to need to start thinking about more airport infrastructure. We're going to need to start thinking about ATC towers, air traffic control towers. So we've only got the one at the moment, we can only do the small. So let's place one of those down, and we're going to put that here. Now that's going to ensure that we can start allowing planes to arrive and leave. The next thing we need to do then is to create a weather station so that we can start to assess weather conditions. So that helps the planes land later on when you start looking at upgrades. You can add PAPI lights, and you can add lights to the actual runway itself for night time. So that's all looking good. That's all looking very well. And as you can see, nothing is being built at the moment. So this is when we need to start thinking about some of the actual running of the airport. So the first thing we need to do is get our contractors in. Now, because we've unlocked that top piece of land, we get a slightly better contractor. So unlocking that piece of land at the beginning is a bit strategic, and we're going to go for these guys because I know already they're cheaper, so they can do a maximum of 140 contractors at any one time, and they're £4.20 per hour per contractor. Whereas you look at Berkeley, they're £6.70 for 140, and if you look at Highway, they've only got 79, which is £7.30. So straight away you're getting better value for money by using the blue build. So I'm going to sign that contract and allow them to come in. So then once we've started the construction process, we'll speed up the game. Once we've then started the construction process, we can then start to allow planes and general aviation to come in. Now, why is this not? Oh, I know why. Schoolboy error. So I've accepted the contract, but I've not actually deployed any of the contractors. Good start. So once you've accepted your contract, you can see within the airport economy simulator, within the operations piece, you've got this area for construction workers, and you can dismiss or deploy your workers. So at the moment they're not on site. They've just signed a contract and that's it. They're not actually at work. So we need to deploy them, and they're now going to be delivered to the airport, and they'll start constructing. And the one thing I've noticed with the game is it does tend to try and construct closest to furthest to the construction zone. So when we start looking at doing things down this side of the map, down on the right hand side of the map, we might need to move where we're going to deliver our materials to, because it makes the process quicker. But as you can see, it's starting to build the road. So there's our fuel depot, and they're going to start doing the checkpoint. So whilst we're waiting for the rest of everything else to build, we can start looking at the fuel situation. So again, within the economy area, we're going back into contracts, and now you can see we've got some more fuel, or some more contracts that have been issued. So we've got 3 fuel contracts that we can choose from. There's AVI fuel, there's nature fuel, and there's can't even. And you can see that this one here is higher rated than the other. Oh, we've got a new one. They're higher rated than the other 2. So you've got Fuel and Go. They're looking at 0.9 and 0.2. And then the one that I'm not even going to pronounce is the same. It's 0.9, 0.2. And the other 2 are likely to be more expensive. Yeah, look. So you've got £1.50 and 40p. And then you've also got £1.40 and 30p. So you're looking at very different costs, and the idea of this is that we want to keep this as cheap as we can so that we can start making some money early. So we're going to go with Fuel and Go, and like I say, the strategy of opening up that other plot of land generates better contracts for you to use. So even though you're spending 750 grand to open up that first piece, you're going to start better off when it comes to actually paying for things. So we're going to sign that contract, and then they're going to come and fill up our fuel. Here they go. That's it. So we're now full. So our main tank is full, and we're going to be able to set when this is refilled as well. So in the early days of the game, this isn't going to empty very quickly. It's just going to be a case of the airport coming in and off you go. So we can set the refuel supply at 10%. So when this gets down to 10%, we're going to get another delivery of fuel, and as you can see, it's going to cost some money. So taking a look then at our progress of our construction elsewhere, so here we are. It's looking quite good actually. So we've got our taxi way started, so we're going to need to give a path for the planes. The ATC tower is ready, so technically we could open the airport. Nothing's going to be able to land because the runway's not ready yet, but that's fine. So now we've got our vehicle depot, so we're now going to need to buy some kind of refueling vehicles that we're going to then be able to refuel our planes with. So we need to purchase the vehicles, and at the moment we've only got the one vehicle that's available to us. So we've got the AV gas. So I'm going to buy 3 of those, and they'll be delivered automatically to the airport and parked for us. Now later on, when we come to doing terminals and we come to doing international flights, you can set which vehicle belongs to which terminal, so you can sort of shift the workload. And from what I can make out from playing this before, so correct me if I'm wrong, I'm happy to be corrected, when you highlight a vehicle depot within a terminal, that vehicle then belongs to that terminal, or that depot belongs to that terminal. I have, however, seen it where some of the vehicles are shared, so things like catering services, they get shared across all of the terminals, and they'll just make a path. Right, so a runway's built. So we need just to set on here what can and can't come in. So the default is it's going to be our small aircraft, it's going to be general aviation. So that's great, that's already ready to go. And our stands, at the moment they can't accept night flights. They can accept passengers if we want, or we can accept it to do smaller vehicles, smaller planes, etc. So we need to start building a pathway to get to and from our runways. So I'm going to get our taxi path tool, and then we're going to start building a runway path, just like this. So this blue line is now going to tell you where the airports are, where the airplanes are going to be able to travel. And here you go with connecting up the stands. So you can see now that the warning symbols on the stands have all disappeared, and some options have now appeared. So I can swap this stand out to be commercial flights if I wanted to, and then it's going to start asking me for security checkpoints and boarding desks and stuff. So that's fine. We're just going to leave this as general aviation, so we don't need to do anything else. And we're going to carry on just connecting up our stands, and then when everything else is built, we're then going to be able to open the airport. So whilst we're waiting for that to do, let's just do a quick recheck on everything that we need to make sure that we can straight away trade as quickly as possible. So our runway is built, and it's set up to accept general aviation, and it's set up to accept only small aircrafts for now, so that's fine. We've got our first batch of stands going, we've got a taxiway going, we're connected up to the vehicles, and we know that our vehicles in the depot can reach the stands because we've built our service road. And down at the bottom here we've got just the one depot where our fuel is going to go. Now I don't know if this is going to cause us problems later on with the distance between this depot and the vehicle depot, because that means that then when the lorries are empty, they've then got to travel all the way back down to the very beginning. So that's something we might change later on when we've got a busier airport. The reason I wanted this out of the way is because down here later on, I know we're going to need to start thinking about things like the ice melting. I can't remember what they're called offhand. Melting the ice off the planes, and they need pads that you can come in. So I know I'm going to need space down here. I don't really know what sort of thing we're going to be doing later on, and I know as well that when we start building terminals, we're going to need space down this left hand side to start putting in our gates, and we're going to need space for buildings and space for shops and space for boarding areas and baggage and everything. So it's going to get quite big and quite complicated. So if this is out of the way, at least it's parked at the bottom, you know, it's down here. We could also put other things along here as well. We'll put the other fuel type, we'll probably put the actual filling station for the ice trucks, which I just don't remember what they're called. So that's fine. Okay, so checking up here then, we're almost ready with our runway. So let's just connect this up. Job done. Now, at the moment, this is going to struggle to accept multiple flights at the same time. So what we need to do is to do a whole right click on it and set some directional arrows. Now this works a little bit like a block section does on a roller coaster. Actually, it sort of allows the planes to proceed before one's left to the actual runway itself. So it hasn't got to wait for the plane to take off before we can carry on running down. I know that this is a feature that's been implemented quite recently. It's been here since the beginning, but its actual functionality has been a bit hit and miss. Okay, so let's just do some operations on this runway. So we want them to take off from the bottom, and we want them to land, come through the top that way. So if we set the one-way arrows, then we know it's going to just be one big circle around here. Okay, so we need to set the takeoff mode as well. Now we're only using one type of plane, so it doesn't actually matter, but you have two options. You can either set them to take off from the bottom of the runway, or you can set them to take off relevant to the size. So when you're using larger runways later on in the game, where you're going to have your big birds landing, you can set whether small planes that land on that runway take off from the very bottom of the runway, or whether they take off from halfway up the runway, and then you can have multiple entrances and exits as you go along. So you have that ability. I'm going to keep it at the moment to the bottom, so that's fine. So we can open the runway. That's ready. All of our contractors are done, so just because we're going to be spending and hemorrhaging money, I'm just going to get rid of them. There we go. Okay, so the bus is now going to come and pick them up. So we know we've got fuel. Oh, there you go. So we've got 33% fuel, so that will be coming back in shortly. Let's finish off our taxi. Okay, here we go. Okay, great. So I think we're ready to open. So within operations, we now need to physically open. So the first thing we need to do is to allow general aviation into the airport. So that's going to turn on the ability to allow just random planes to come in and use our stands. We also need refueling enabled, and we can open. So here's our first planes. So these planes are now going to come in. They will take up a stand, and if you have a look, we can see where they've come from. So this one's come from actual London, and they've now requested fuel. So the fuel tanks will leave the depot. They'll come down to the stand, and you can now start to charge them for fuel. So these planes will they'll sit there, they'll wait there for a while, and you charge them for the period of time that they sit at your stand for. Now later on in the game, when you hire more executives and more officials, you are going to be able to change the amount that you charge for your runways, charge for your parking, charge for your taxiways, etc. So you get the ability to change all of that. So we've got our first planes coming in. Air traffic are doing their job. They're doing what they need to do, and now we're going to start hopefully making some money. So some fuel being given, and then we've got some planes that are landing. So we're looking all right. So we were about to break even then. Did you see that? So we're losing £2,600 an hour at the moment. So we just need to be aware of that, because at the moment we suck. And the idea of this is we are not to suck. We are not supposed to be sucking at this game. So, is there anything else that we can do? Okay. Plane landing. Brilliant. Okay, so there we go. So we're making some money for the first time. Excellent. It's all right. We've still got $1.5 million left anyway, but we're going to need that. We're going to need that later on. So what we need to do before we can move on is make sure that we've got a profitable general aviation business, so that can withstand what we were about to do in the onslaught of building. So I think what we're going to do now, because we've got a couple of stands free as you can see, but I do want to increase our capacity for planes landing. So let's build a couple more stands. I'm going to start them down the bottom because it's going to be easier to put this road. So if I do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 additional stands, we're going to pre-connect them to the taxiway, and then we're going to need our service road. There we go, our service road. So I'm thinking if we're at full capacity, we're not making money at the moment. Then if we increase our capacity, they can park for longer. So that's fine. So we've got 5 more stands coming in. Let's bring our contractors back in. There we go. And then they're going to arrive. How are we doing money-wise? So we're okay. We're okay. We're not exactly making money. Oh, we are now. Excellent. Right, so the contractors have just arrived, so they're going to start building. So let's have a look at how we're doing money-wise. So I'm in the economy panel, and here you can see here's your budget overviews. You've got some more controls that come along later on in the game as and when you start to hire staff. I'm just going to swap this over to daily so we can see how we're comparing to days. So at the moment for today, we're losing £14,000. Previous day was £46,000, so it's in the right direction. But what we have to look at are these other expenses. So bearing in mind that we spent the best part of 100 grand just on building. So technically speaking, we're actually going to be breaking some kind of a profit, which is good news. There we go, so our new stands are now built and they're all ready. So now we just need to double check whether, there we go. So if I come into the job tasks, I can see the vehicles and whether they're struggling. So at the moment we've got our three fuel trucks, so that's fine, that's all good, and they're claiming jobs, and we've got more than we actually need. So the last thing you want is for your general aviation to come down and not be able to get the service that they request. So that's a good sign. Right, so contractors are done, get rid of those, send them home, and then we can start seeing if we make some money. So here we go, I'm going to start picking up the contractors. I'm going to start going home. So at night time it's quite normal for you to start losing money at night time. You tend to not have so many flights. Now general aviation is able to land and take off at night time, but your commercial flights to start with aren't. You're going to need to research a license to be able to do that. And later on we'll see how we're going to manage international and our local flights to see what sort of ratio we're going to need. Okay, so looking back through, so there's our planes taking off. So we're making about £1,000 an hour at the moment, so that's a good sign. Excellent, okay, so I think for episode 1 that's a very good place to leave it. So this episode, this is what we've achieved. We have managed to build ourselves a profitable general aviation airport. So at the moment we've got an airport that's open. It's allowing enthusiasts to bring their planes along and hire our stands to park for a while. So at the moment we can safely say we don't suck at this game. We'll soon see how that's going to change. So what we're going to do next episode, we'll start looking through the research screen, we'll start getting some of the commercial licenses to come through. We'll start to build our actual first terminal and start to look at how we're going to manage actual commercial flights and get some passengers in. So thank you so much for joining me for the last half hour. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. And here's looking to episode 2.